Rezus Hashem, we're starting now with the Hakdama to Masechta Sukkah, and I think many of us are already familiar with maybe the Mishnayos and many of the halachas, but it's good to go through it to understand it well. The Masechta deals with the mitzvahs that are unique to the Yontif of Sukkot, which is the mitzvah of, the first parak is going to deal with the dimensions of the Sukkah, the second parak is going to deal with the mitzvah of Yeshiva Sukkah, dwelling in the Sukkah, the third parak is going to talk about the Daled Minim. The fourth parak is going to talk about the Arava, the mitzvahs Arava and the Beis HaMikdash. And the fifth parak, and more of the fourth parak also, is going to be discussing the Simchas Beis HaShe'eva and the mitzvah of Nisuch HaMayim. So let's talk, there's a couple of inyanim that we'll talk in the Akdama. Really four basic ideas like we just explained. So the first mitzvah that the Masechta deals with is Basukkos Teshu Shivas Yamim. In Sukkot you should dwell for a 7-day period, as I stated in Torah. The Chachamim, the Gemara, on Daf Chav Ches Amud Beis learned that you should dwell in the Sukkah as requiring us to dwell in the Sukkah in the same manner that we live in our houses during the rest of the year. This means that during the 7 days of Sukkot, one is mechuyev midaraisa to treat the Sukkah as his home. Any activities one normally performs in his house, such as eating, drinking, and sleeping, and even just, like sitting on the couch, must instead be done in the Sukkah. Now we do know, halacha l'maisa, that it's mutter to eat or drink a small amount, achilas arai, outside the Sukkah. Since a person would eat such a snack outside his home, he may do so outside the Sukkah. They say a maisa that I think they told the Chazon Ish that a certain Rebbe had like a sink in the Sukkah, and he doesn't leave the Sukkah against Yantiv. So it's true that it does sound like a great milah, but the Chazon Ish said it's not a jail. Right? You don't stay in your house for 7 days. You go out to daven, you go to the store. Not that you should be going to the store in Yantiv, but you take a walk, you go outside, so that you're allowed to do in Yantiv as well. The main part of the sukkah is its roof or the schach. In fact, the word sukkah comes from the word schach, like Rashi says on Daf Beis. Schach is defined as a roof that provides shade. If it was built or put in place for some purpose other than providing shade, it's possible it's no good. For this reason, a house may not be used as a sukkah since its roof was built for the sake of year-round residence, and not primarily to provide shade. It's not kosher schach. The schach doesn't need to be completely solid, but a total area of all the solid parts of the schach must be greater than the total area of all the gaps in the schach, and it must be made of material that grew from the ground and it has since been detached, and it's incapable of becoming tameh. Items that can become tameh include people, food, and utensils. Therefore, if schach is edible or has been fashioned into a utensil, it's no good. For example, branches of straw, that would be an issue. The sukkah must measure at least 7 by 7 tfachim, like the Gemara says on Tav Gimel. The walls of a sukkah can be made out of any material. The Gemara brings up many fascinating discussions of what it could be made out of. At least 3 walls are required, 2 of which must be at least 7 tfachim wide, and the height of the sukkah may not be less than 10 tfachim or more than 20 amas, as we'll see in the first Mishnah. Okay, that's the basics of the mitzvah of sukkah. Number 2, we also have the Daled Minim. The pasuk says in Parshas Emor, "Ulekachtem lechem b'yem rishon prietz hadar kapos tomorrow banafetz avos v'arbe nachal usmachdem l'fnei Hashem lekechem shevat yamim." You shall take for yourself on the first day of Sukkot the fruit of a beautiful tree, branches of date palms, a shoot of a plaited tree, and willows of a brook, and you shall rejoice before Hashem for a 7-day period. Here the Torah commands us to perform on Sukkot the mitzvah of taking the Daled Minim, which are the fruit of a beautiful tree, which is a esrik, which is a certain type of citrus fruit. The branch of a date palm is a lulav, and anafetz avos is hadassim, which is a leafy twig of a myrtle tree or a bush, and the willows of a brook are aravas, which are leafy twigs from a willow tree. The basic mitzvah is to hold on to 1 lulav, 1 esrik, 3 hadassim, and 2 aravas. The ideal way to perform the mitzvah is that after one ties the lulav, hadassim, and aravas together, one takes the bundle in his right hand and the esrik in the left hand and waves them in all 4 directions of the compass and up and down. And the Gemara explains that the reason for this waving it around is similar to the mitzvah of tenufa that we have with the karbonos in the Beis HaMikdash, is because it's lahafzik t'lolim roim, to stop bad dews and bad winds from destroying the crops. Which the whole mitzvah of Daled Minim is Besukos. Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah says that on Sukkos b'chag nidainin alamayim, and these are mitzvahs that we do in the Taimei HaMitzvahs, is to all these things grow al kol mayim, the Gemara says in Tainas. So these things are used to protect against anything that would make a problem with the weather from throughout the year. In the Beis HaMikdash, this mitzvah applied on all 7 days of Sukkot, like the pasuk says, "L'fnei Hashem Elokeichem Shavas Yamim." But outside the Beis HaMikdash in the Medina, the chiyuv applies only on the first day. L'kachtam l'chem b'yom harishon. After the second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, Chachamim were masakin that the mitzvah should be performed everywhere on all days of the Yom Tov except for Shabbos, to commemorate the practice of what they did in the Beis HaMikdash as a Zeicher LaMikdash. And also, a big part of Zeicher LaMikdash altogether is because when the Beis HaMikdash is going to be built, we'll have a sense of what we need to do and how to do it in a similar way that the Chafetz Chaim was very busy with getting everybody, motivating and promoting the Limud of Kachim to know what to do when the Beis HaMikdash gets rebuilt. The third thing we have to know is that besides for the mitzvah of taking 2 aravos as part of the Daled Minim, there's another mitzvah involving aravos on Sukkot. Each day, Kohanim took long aravos, waved them, walked around the Beis HaMikdash holding them, walked around the Mizbeach holding them, and then stood them against the sides of the Mizbeach. On the first 6 days of Sukkot, they went around the Mizbeach once, and on the 7th day, they went around 7 times. This mitzvah is not said specifically or explicitly in the Torah, but it was taught to Moshe at Har Sinai and then passed down from one generation to the next. Halach al Moshe Sinai. Bizman hazeh, as a zeicher for this of the Arava and the Beis HaMikdash, we bring the Sefer Torah up to the bima in the shul and we walk around it while holding the Daled Minim. On the first day we make 1 hakafa, and on the 7th day we make 7 hakafas. The 7th day, which is Hoshana Rabbah. The Nevi'im were masakin a minhag to take haravas on the 7th day of Sukkot, even out to the Beis HaMikdash, and beat them on the ground, which is what we do on Hoshana Rabbah, which we still do ad hayom hazeh. The last part of the Hakdama is the mitzvah of Nisuch HaMayim. Every day of Sukkot, when the Tamid Shel Shachar was brought, a kohen would pour a certain amount of spring water into a bowl on the Mizbeach. The water would flow through a hole in the bottom of the bowl onto the top of the Mizbeach, and from there into a pipe that descended into a deep underground cavity. This mitzvah is called Nisuch HaMayim, the pouring of the water, which was also halach l'Moshe Sinai, and was passed down throughout the generations. The Gemara Tainus learns it out from a remez, from an extra mem and a yud and an extra mem, the words that are karbanos of Sukkos. And why are these words extra? It spells out mayim, and like we said, b'chagini dainu ala mayim. Therefore, we have this mitzvah of Nisuch HaMayim. The water for this mitzvah was drawn from the Shiloach spring near Yerushalayim very early in the morning before daybreak. Every night of Chol HaMoed, besides for Leil Shabbos, there was a Simchas Beis She'eva that was held in the Ezras Noshim in the Beis HaMikdash in preparation for drawing the water. That's why it's called Beis HaShoyeva, where they would be shoyev the mayim. They would draw the water. The Chasidim and Shemaisa would sing and dance through the night to the accompaniment of music played by the Levium. This celebration was called Simchas Beis HaShoyeva, the joy of the house of the drawing, based on the pasuk of Ushafta Mayim B'Sosla Mimayne HaYeshua. And the house of drawing refers to the place where the festivities were held in the Beis HaMikdash. And the Gemara says, the Mishnah really says that Kamish Le'ra Simchas Beis HaShoyeva Le'ra Simcha Miyamav. It was a tremendous simcha over here. At the end of the celebration, a procession of Kohanim and others would go to the Shiloach, draw the water from it, and bring the water back to the Beis HaMikdash for the mitzvah of Nisuch HaMayim. Now, Bezman Hazeh, we do have, people do commemorate this Simchas Beis HaShoyeva with dancing, and they say the Tezvav Shir Hamalis, like the Gemara says that they would say on the 15 steps in the Beis HaMikdash, and they would. And really a big part of the simcha is, we spoke about this in the past, but a big inyan of the simcha over here was out the Tshuva Me'ira, that's Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Tshuva Me'ava is Sukkos, and it has a lot to do with this water, which, we'll talk about in Hashem at a later date. Okay.